Hello and welcome to another edition of Select Board Roundtable. I am Beth Cassavant and I am joined by my colleagues on the board, Michelle Conlon, John Samia, and our chair, Mo DePalo. And this is a momentous occasion. It is Mo DePalo's final Select Board Roundtable, unless we have him come back as a guest, as he is coming to the end of his 30 years on the Select Board or the Board of Selectmen, because you will always be a Selectman first. And so we just thought we'd get together, and we are missing one member. Teresa Flynn was not able to join us tonight, but we wanted to just get together and talk about 30 years, kind of like a Mo retrospective here. And
long time.
yeah, it's a really long time.
I had all black hair when I started.
That's what the job did to you, right?
Yeah.
You see like the before and after pictures of like presidents after they serve for 4 years. Maybe we should have done like a Mo.
Sheila has some.
There's still one in Town Hall, actually in the meeting room as well, in the upper right-hand corner.
Is he really?
Yeah, take a look at that picture.
Yeah, a lot lighter, and my hair was a lot darker.
What's the biggest change over the last 30 years that you see?
The biggest change? Things got a lot more complex. A lot more complex. The budget got a lot more complex. The budget got a lot bigger. The concepts are the same, but everything is more involved. It takes a lot longer to get things done than it did before. It's really amazing. When I look back at the numbers, I think health insurance was $1.5 million. We thought that was a lot. I think the budget was around $34 million when we started. It was really a lot simpler. Everything was smaller. The police, the fire department was smaller.
The town.
The town was smaller. We had one decade where we grew 10,000 people. It was the big issues then were big debate over whether or not the school population was going to grow, whether or not we really needed new schools, and big controversy over the housing growth. People were really screaming to stop the housing growth. And every time the planning board brought zoning forward to, the only way you're going to slow down the housing growth was to change the lot sizes. And every time they brought something forward, it didn't pass.
At town meeting.
At town meeting. And that went on for years, but the school, trying to get a school built was incredible. That went on pre me being on the board, probably 4 or 5 years. Everything that came forward didn't pass. There was a group of people that would trying to convince everybody that we needed more space, we needed new buildings, that the growth was coming because the buildings were coming in. I mean, the houses were coming online, and there were other people who just didn't believe it. They didn't believe the projections, and it just went on and on. And so they would say, one time the selectman told the school committee, bring us a comprehensive plan, don't give us this and that. And so they did. They brought a plan together to go up on Maple Ave before the town owned the Maple Ave property. So there were a few buildings they were going to bring us to the long-term plan. We're going to do this and that. And that got shot down at town meeting. So that was the end of that. And then I forgot what the next one was they brought up. But nothing passed. And so they brought another one up, and that didn't pass. And then the voters said, well, give us a choice. So there was one of a building in addition to another school. So those both failed. Nothing worked. And finally, when I was on the board, and it had nothing to do with me being on the board, but we got Floral Street. finally, well, the population really started to grow, and people started to see that, hey, maybe this is real. And of course, and then then the argument was, where's the school going to go? And there was a big, people wanted us to build it here because obviously this was a school until it burned. When this burned, they didn't rebuild it because at the time we didn't need the school. And so people who lived in this part of town wanted the school built over here. That went nowhere. There was still land down where Audubon is. And so we went to town meeting and tried to get money to buy that land. That got shot down. And we started with the whole thing about trying to find the space. And what happened was we looked around where the population growth was going to be, and it turned to be up in the quadrant of town where the Floral Street School is now. And if you go back and look at the 1970 master plan, they predicted that we were going to need a school right in that area. So we started looking at that. Coincidentally, I lived across the street from the cornfield where the school was going to go. So all my neighbors and myself, we all advocated for the school. And then this was the site. And my neighbors came and said to me, you got to fight this school. I said, what? I said, can't fight. We've been fighting for like 4 years to get a school. Now we got a school. You want me to say no? I can't do that. We don't want it here. It's like, it's going to be right behind our houses, all the traffic. I'm sorry. No way. We just made an argument that we needed a school. You wanted to, we need a school. This is where the master plan 20 years ago said it needs to go. This is where it needs to go. I'm not backing down from this one. It's going to go here. If we're going to get it, this is where it's going to go. So some of my neighbors didn't talk to me for a couple of years. They really didn't. And but we got it. And part of it was we had to rebuild part of Floral Street. We had to rebuild. We didn't have to, but part of Floral Street needed to be rebuilt. We also rebuilt South Street, and that's how that ended up going. But it's amazing how. It's be careful what you ask for because you might get it. And that was the perfect thing in Floral Street.
Now it's a desirable neighborhood to live in. Like it's the school is an asset.
Well, it was a desirable neighborhood then, but, when I moved in there, we built our own house. And when we were there was literally a cornfield across the street.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of neat.
A lot of students that walk to school in the neighborhood. And,
but Floral Street was the beginning, and that cost. We originally thought it was going to cost $10 million, and then when they got into design, it cost 12, and people freaked out, and rightly so because $12 million, a $2 million increase on a $10 million project was a lot of money, but think of that. $12 million for a 700 student school.
You can't even do design work for 12
No,
million.
It was amazing. And
times have changed.
and then we went to the high school, which was another interesting. I could go on about the schools, but all of a sudden people realized this is real.
Yeah.
And so we started looking for a high school location. There were about 7 locations. And everyone we looked at, this is the one, there were wetlands issues. Nothing worked. We looked at the Morale property on Walnut Street, and people were really psyched about that. You would need footbridges everywhere. It didn't work for a high school. And in the end, the place we didn't want to be was where we ended up, because everybody knew what it was.
Right.
It was a big rock. So we ended up there, and it was all ledge, as was predicted. And it ended up being worse than what was predicted. So we went $2 million over on that project, because every place they did test borings was 2 feet away from the real outcroppings of ledge. Literally would miss by 18 inches, 2 feet. They would drill, and it would be, and I am not exaggerating, they would drill and they would hit ledge here, and 2 feet over it would go down 14 feet. It was right where the driveway comes up just before you get to where the gym is. It was very unfair, very bad luck. It would have been there anyways, but at least we would have known. So we got that passed, and we got the Oak renovation passed at the same time. So we got on a roll with that, but that's what changed people's attitudes about, the whole school thing, and then the projects just kept going along. The only thing that slowed it up was after Oak was interesting. General contractors we went through 3 general contractors because 2 of them went bankrupt in the middle of the job. The electrical contractor went bankrupt in the middle of the job. One of the other ones went bankrupt in the middle of the job. There was a little fire in one of the rooms early on before it was too far along. That slowed it down. It was really amazing. And in spite of that, the thing still came in under budget, which was amazing. It was a little bit late, but it came in. We got that done. And then a couple years later, we were going to start on Sherwood, and that's when the state stopped the SBA. The way you used to do with school was you'd apply to the state, they would basically approve you, you'd get on the list, and very, very loose guidelines on what you could do. It was kind of like, yeah, do what you want, unless it was out of control. And then you'd get on the list and you'd start, and you might not start to get your funding for, it could be 5 or 10 years. And then you'd get, once they paid you, they started the payments that you get paid over 20 years. They stopped the program right when we were starting design on Sherwood. Yeah. So we stopped, we had to wait. We had a building committee set up. John LeBeau was on it. And we stopped, we had to wait a couple of years, apply for it, and then after a couple of years, we built Sherwood. So anyways, enough about that.
And if you remember, the same argument was that the student population was going to go down, and there was all this data, and that didn't hold true either.
And that school, and then I'll stop about school, but that school, we built during the recession.
Yes.
Sherwood, right.
And that school ended up being a steal, because it was the Great Recession, and people were looking for work, and we had Gilbane Construction, which is a really, really good company. It was a really good price, and they did a great job. There wasn't a hiccup on that building, and we really lucked out. That building cost us, what, $44 million? $44 million to build Sherwood.
Wow. Which after reimbursement would have been the same price to refurbish the current facility.
Right, right.
You were on the school committee at the time?
It was.
Yeah. And that one they started that program, that if the state said they give you 50%, they give you the 50% up front. You didn't have to wait the 20 years.
Right, which is what we're doing now.
And then, I mean, Beal is a lot bigger than Sherwood is, but Sherwood was what, 84 million?
Originally was it was
the
originally
budget
contemplated to be 92.6.
Yeah, and it came in a lot less.
Yes.
Schools were the most interesting thing all the way through.
Actually reminds me of the first time I met you, which is going to sound familiar to all of us when I get to the end of it. So I was going for an appointment for school committee. I hadn't been involved with things, so I had a lot going on.
You weren't running for school committee.
No,
you
it was
were
an
going to fill a
appointment.
vacancy.
It was an open seat. So the way it works is the Board of Selectmen at the time had 5 votes, and then school committee had 4 votes. And I was a newcomer. I hadn't been involved with really the political life. And I reached out to everybody. And I ended up having coffee with everybody, including Mo. I know that's a shocker. But what I remember most about you is that I didn't know if, hey, folks already had a favorite, if they knew people. They didn't know me. And the first time I met with you, like you always do, you sat down, got to know me, honest up front. I said, just asking, hey, if there's, do you think there's a preference? And you came in with an open mind and said, no, I really like what you have to say. And that is what you've always done, where you listen to the facts, or you listen to who's in front of you, or you give people a chance, and you're always there and available. So you've held a record, I think, in Shrewsbury alone for coffee. So that's
Yeah,
but I can think about that is when I remember meeting you. You gave me, I think, an hour and a half. And you gave me from the
I had a large coffee, that's why.
yeah. Hey, I had to make sure you'd stay, right? But you gave me from the beginning of talking to me to campaign tips and all the way in between. And that's, to me, representative of who you are. You still have your foot on the gas all these years later, in the details, willing to sit with people for a cup of coffee and want to meet people and learn about them so you know the complete person. And that is when, that's a long time ago now, but that to me was my first time.
Was it 17 years?
Yeah, 17 years ago.
wow.
I remember that. I remember where we sat.
I do too.
In Black Diamond.
Yeah. That was a good place. But that was the first time, and that's who you are, where you always get in the details, you learn about people, you learn about the project, and you make the best decisions.
It was
possible.
funny about learning about you because I didn't know Samia's, like, just because I grew up in town, just 30-something thousand people, you don't know everybody. Everybody thinks you know everybody. And like, my youngest brother is a lot younger than me. He's 12 years younger than me. And I called him up and I said, hey, you know the Samia family? Because this guy, John Samia, wants to get appointed to the school committee. And I talked to him. He seems like a nice guy, but I don't know his family at all. And he said, oh, yeah. He said, I was really good friends with his brother growing up through school. And he said, we're still good friends. And yeah, I know John. He says, he's a couple of years younger than us. He said, we used to go over to their house all the time. We used to tease him.
I could be 4 years younger than your brother.
We used to tease him. He said they're a really good family. So anyway, so I get my brother gave him the seal of approval. But no, it was a good choice.
No, thank you. But it's just, that's the fact that you were willing to give so much time, as you always have.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you spent a lot of time with me when I was running, and I was coming in. I didn't have, I don't come from a political family. Didn't have like, political experience. I've gotten involved in some campaigns and stuff locally, but I was sort of coming in as a volunteer in the community, running for the position, and you just embraced me, like not we had a few conversations, but you were just so open and sharing the knowledge and the history of everything, and introducing me to people, and it was incredible because it's the 30 years of service that you have in this community is something that is gonna it doesn't exist outside of you anymore. So it's
I'm still here, so
yeah, no, but it's
exists.
once your term is up, it's going to be a big hole. So it's
my opinion has always been it was people actually when the boards voted to appoint John, the Boston Globe used to, the regional Globe West used to pick us up once in a while, and I got a call from the reporter, and she was asking me, what made you want to vote for John, and I told the reporter, and we were talking, and I said, I don't care if somebody agrees, even has the same philosophy as me. It doesn't make any difference. It's like if any of you, if you think you're doing it for the right reason and you're true to yourself, that's the most important thing. We agree, that's great. But if we don't, it doesn't make any difference. As long as everybody's doing it, whoever they are, for the right reason, that's the most important thing. Because then you can get along with somebody. You know that they're being honest and true to themselves. And that was the same philosophy that I used when we voted for town managers.
Yeah.
It's like, be true to yourself and we'll be fine.
Yeah, that was the conversation. That was what you said to me the first time we spoke.
It's what I
So-
believe.
Yeah.
Because then you know where the person's coming from all the time. And that was always how I dealt with people. If somebody was like that, it's fine. And you can tell when somebody's not. And that's what I saw in John when we had that discussion. And I saw that in everybody else I talked to that that I ended up supporting. Not that everybody I supported won election, but that's the name of the game. But
Yeah, you never look at decisions with a political lens. You always digest the facts and make the decision, like you said, the best with the information and make the best decision possible. And and good decisions aren't always popular.
Yeah.
That's so true.
there's a little bit of a. Sometimes you got to understand the politics of it, but it's still in the end. You have to make the decision you think is the right decision for the town. I had family members who didn't like some of the votes I took, but
But you're living with it too, because you live in the town,
Right.
You know, so you're always thinking about it as a resident, because you're both a resident and someone who's elected to lead.
yeah, people forget that sometimes.
Right, right. When the taxes go up or the water rates go
Yeah.
up or the trash bags break, like it's all we deal with all of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what has been your favorite part of being a selectman? Like, favorite project, your favorite aspect of being a selectman? Like, what are you going to miss the most?
Meeting people, meeting residents, just meeting people and getting to know them. And I like it when I meet people who come, who I meet because they're having an issue. Because you see them one way, and then you start talking to them and you get to know them more as a real person, but you get to know them not under stress. So you get to know them as they are without a problem. And I think that's really neat. And I got to meet so many people and made so many friends through this thing. That's really incredible. Because I think this whole job is all about helping people. I don't care what level it's at. I don't care if it's building a school or it's helping somebody get a pothole fixed. That's what it's all about. I don't care how you look at it. That in the end, that's what it's about. It's about helping people. And sometimes I have to remind people when I bug them up at town hall, because I can bug department heads.
No,
I can bug department heads sometimes and push them, but I'd say, hey, when a problem, when somebody comes to us, any of us with a problem, a resident, most of the time, they don't come to us first. They've worked their way up and been frustrated, and whether or not they're right about their position on a problem or not, they're frustrated that at least they didn't get an answer that they could understand why the answer is what it is. But by the time it gets to us, we have to advocate for them, at least to get them the answer. And sometimes people don't understand that, and I think it's important that we do it. And I told department heads, it's like, hey, too bad. I mean, people need a voice sometimes.
Yes.
And if one of my biggest disappointments, honestly, as a selectman has been when I try to help somebody, I do help them. I guess what happens is I help them, but I don't get the result. Those are the most disappointing things I had happen to me as a selectman. And they might just be little things, but it's so disappointing when you try and you can't get the result that you think you should get. Not sometimes you don't get the result because you shouldn't get it, but those are the most disappointing things. We've lost votes at town meeting. We all know we've gotten shellacked. I mean,
Yep.
we tried to get the dog hearings switched to the chief of police a long time ago, because you used to have a vote at town meeting, and we got creamed. Town meeting, absolutely no way. I don't know what the vote was. All I remember is we got creamed. It didn't bother me. That
Dog
was,
hearings are must-watch TV.
Yeah.
What it is. Our ratings go through the roof.
it was so funny. People got up and said they didn't want the police chief to have that much power. And we said, like, he can arrest you. You don't want him to be able to have a dog hearing. But that didn't bother me. But when you try to solve a problem for a resident and you can't get it done, to me, that's the most disappointing thing. And to me, the most rewarding thing is when you help somebody.
For sure.
Like, when you tried to get the person on Grove Meadow or whatever, the street light.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those kind of things are the most satisfying things you can do.
Right. I always love when I'm just like somewhere random, like at CVS picking up a prescription or something, and someone will be like, I'm so glad I ran into you. I really need to ask you about this.
Yeah.
And I love that because it really does give you that opportunity to connect with people and make a difference in their lives.
Yeah, and I mean, you bump into somebody like that, and they tell you something. They go, "What? Wait a minute. Give me a name. I'll call you, and you can get it fixed." And you go, "Okay, that's great."
And sometimes all they really want is information. Sometimes the answer isn't necessarily that we can solve a problem, but just understanding the intricacies around what they're dealing with or experiencing, I think makes people just at least understand.
Yep. So that's those stories. You go on for hours with this.
So what are you going to do with all your free time?
He's gonna watch us.
And all the riches you've earned being a
Yes.
selectman.
Oh yeah.
The pay is the pay is
You're
incredible.
gonna miss that, right?
I got to tell you, that pillow is so full. I don't know. I don't know. I still might want to do something involving government at some level. I got other stuff. I mean, I really do want to. We want to go someplace warm in the winter. I got some hobbies I want to do that I put off for 30 years. So I got stuff. I got 5 grandkids.
Right.
I think the local economy is going to take a beating though, with all the breakfast you've had and the coffee that you've had.
Oh no, the coffees will stay.
Okay.
Coffees will stay. It just gave me an excuse, like
We'll still have coffee. Don't forget us, Mo. We'll still have coffee.
Well, it looks like we're gonna run out of time, Beth.
Oh, all
Got a
right.
minute and a half.
I'll still be
left.
around, and I'm always available to give you any information that I know or that I think I know. So take it, and you can take it for what it's worth.
Well, actually, to that point, you think about turnover. We've lost a lot of long tenured employees at the town hall. You are a bridge. So select board emeritus.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that.
Well, I tell you, I seriously, I'll help any way I can. I mean, I'm going to be around. Your success is success for the whole town. So if I can help, I know, I think I've told all of you, but I know I told you when you started, your success is the board's success. So anything I can do to help.
You've been an excellent mentor.
And I probably made every mistake that you're going to make. So if you ask me, maybe I can help you not make the mistakes we made in the past. So, take advantage of experiences, making a mistake and learning not to do it again. So,
Right. That's very true. So I
anyways,
guess we're out of time.
it's been great working with you guys.
It's been great.
We got one more meeting.
We booked a dog hearing, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That was
Surprise.
supposed to be a surprise.
Kevin keeps booking stuff for that meeting, and I keep saying, Jesus, Kevin, really, it's my last meeting. Do we have to have a 3-hour meeting? But
We don't want to let you go, Mo. We want to make sure we get our money's worth.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for 30 years.
sorry I hogged the.
Nope,
No,
that's what
it's
this was
great.
for. It was really, this is great. People
Thank
can
you.
watch this well into the future and hear what you thought about your time on the board.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Thank
Well, I
you.
hope people will tune in to our Mo's final meeting on Tuesday, April 25th. And thank you for watching Select Board Roundtable.